Episode 3 of 7 Worlds, 1 Planet is called South America. So this episode opens up at the very bottom of South America in Patagonia. Here we see pumas. So before this series came out, and I think a lot of people always thought of pumas as North American animals. When you thought of pumas, you tended to think of them being in like the Canadian Rockies or the USA. You didn't tend to think of them as being in South America, but this series definitely changed the perception of them, or at least my perception, because when I think of pumas, I definitely think of Patagonia, like they're almost a definitive Patagonian animal now, and that definitely wasn't the case before the series came out. And this sequence opens up with a mother puma and her 3 cubs, and she's got to provide food for them, which means hunting guanaco. So we see her hunting guanaco a few times, and pretty much every time it's unsuccessful. When you look at guanaco, you think they're probably pretty easy to take on, compared to things like wildebeest or buffalo, pretty easy. But as far as South American animals go, they are a bit challenging. They're quite fast, they're quite big, and they're not easy to take down. And the various sequences we get of the puma hunting the guanaco is great, and you're really rooting for the puma to take down one of the guanaco. And as the sequence progresses, the snow comes in, we move into winter, and she still hasn't made a kill. It looks more desperate, which makes you care even more about her plight. She goes into a male's territory, he looks pretty battered. Some of the pumas in these sequences look pretty rough, to be honest, not just this one, but other ones that came after. And in the last hunt, she manages to take down one of the guanaco. It's a great sequence, it's a really good hunt, and because you're so invested in this puma story, it does feel quite rewarding to the audience. But it doesn't end there. She's still got to drag it like a mile back to her cubs, showing how dedicated she is. This sequence did a really good job of kind of putting pumas on the map, I think. You really sympathised with this mother. You saw how dedicated she was to her cubs. It was a really good sequence. And it was so good, in fact, that pretty much every series that came after this just tried to rip it off. So many sequences featuring pumas in Patagonia, particularly pumas hunting guanaco, have popped up after this series. There was a lot of them, and to be perfectly honest with you, none of them have been able to match this one, and a lot of those sequences now kind of feel a bit done to death. I never feel excited about seeing a new one, but this is the one that started it all, and it's still great, it still holds up, it's still a great sequence. It is the definitive puma sequence, and it is the best part of the episode. So yeah, this is a really good way of opening the episode, probably the best we've had so far, I think. Really good stuff. And then we get a little geography lesson. As I've said before, the geography stuff in this series I really like. We talk about the Andes, how it formed, because the sea level's basically moving away from the west coast of South America, and it's pushing sediment up, which has caused the Andes to rise, and it's created a bit of a barrier, so the animals kind of stuck on the west side of the Andes, which is basically a thin strip of coastline, are totally cut off from the rest of the South America. We see Humboldt penguins. This is a nice funny sequence. It's easily the funniest part of the episode. It's just a load of penguins trying to get to the sea. They've got to get past a barrier of sea lions, and it's quite funny just watching them clamber over the sea lions, falling over, manage to get to the water. It's a nice funny sequence. I like that, it is pretty good. And then we move to the cloud forests. We talk about how the cloud forests form because the Andes create that barrier, a lot of clouds pass over, and here we see Andean bears. You don't see Andean bears too often, they're pretty cool. They're one of the most unique bears because they're one of the only ones left of that kind of short-faced lineage. Pretty much every other bear's an ursid, so they're pretty unique, and they're also the inspiration for Paddington Bear. And we see them looking for food, they're just foraging. One of them climbs to the top of the tree to get some fruit, knocks it all over, and the other ones go for it. It's not really groundbreaking behaviour, but it's pretty cool. It's just nice seeing them because you don't see them very often, and I did like that. I thought it was pretty cool. Then we talk about the massive plateaus in the north of South America. This is some of the most stunning scenery in South America, and South America is a pretty picturesque continent, I think. It's pretty cool. We see Angel Falls. It's great stuff. The drones obviously help. It's just a nice sequence. I thought it was pretty cool. And then we talk about cotton top tamarins. We see they're in a little patch of forest, and it's alright. We see them just interacting with each other, foraging. It's nice. However, because of intensive farming, which is a big problem across the world, but particularly in South America, where the forests have been cut down in swathes to make way for farmland, particularly cattle ranching, we see the forest is all fragmented. And because there aren't that many tamarins left, they're basically cut off from each other. We see one of the tamarins looking out on a fence post at a cow. It does a really good job of highlighting how agriculture has taken over the wilds of this continent. Then we spend quite a lot of time in the Amazon. I mean, you kind of have to. It's the, obviously, most famous rainforest in the world. It's also the biggest, so, makes sense. We see a few sequences here. The first one is the mannequins. Basically, just see mannequins displaying. We obviously see the 4 males dancing to attract the female that only one of them will mate with. It was good. I would say that's one of the other sequences that was done in Our Planet, which came out just before the series. And I think this is one of the sequences that was actually done better in that series. I definitely remember enjoying that one more than this one, though it is still good. It's still a good sequence. We also talk about poison dart frogs. This was actually one I'd forgotten about because it's actually the same sequence we just had in Parenthood, and we also got in Life. We see the male. He's got his tadpoles all around the forest. We focus mainly on how he's able to locate them. And obviously, because sometimes he doesn't pick the best locations, there isn't any food in some of them, and obviously he can't provide very much, so he has to call in the female. The female comes along, lays an egg, and they're able to eat that. I feel like that's not an aspect of this story you see very often. It's usually just the male finding a place to lay his tadpole. Not the case here. It was very much focused on the aftermath of that and the mother's role in it. I don't think that's something I was really as aware of before the series, and I don't think it's something you hear about very often. Then we go to the Amazon River. Again, much like the Amazon rainforest is the most famous rainforest in the world, I would argue the Amazon River is probably the most famous in the world. And here we see a lot of scarlet macaws. We've got their chicks in a tree, and the parents go to these salt licks where a lot of parrots are to collect salt to bring back to their chicks. It's cool. So I actually went to a talk years ago, like not long after this series came out, where one of the producers of the series was talking, and he talked about how they actually planned to film something more interesting. I can't remember what it was, but it just fell through, so they filmed this instead. It is still an alright sequence. I think what I liked about it most was that it reminded me of a series I watched when I was like 5, like one of those Wild on One series, I think, which was about macaws at Salt Licks. It just took me right back to that, so I think that's why I enjoyed it more than anything else. And then we got this other creek further south in South America, and here we see piripitanga, which are this species of fish. They don't look particularly impressive, they just kind of look like, bog standard freshwater fish, but we see them following monkeys. The monkeys are eating fruit, they travel along the branches beside the river, and the fish follow them, which I think is really good, because it shows you that the fish are actually intelligent. I think we tend to think of fish as being quite stupid. Obviously there's that famous myth of goldfish only having a memory of 3 seconds, but there are a lot of clever fish out there. I mean, some cleaner wrasse can pass the mirror test. We'll see that when the monkeys are foraging, one monkey, he's about to be on lookout, he falls asleep, which leaves them unprotected, and here we see an anaconda. So while the anaconda isn't really the focus of the sequence, the shots of the anaconda sweeping its way through the water are probably some of the most iconic from this series. It was certainly the first bit of footage that was released about the series, and it's pretty cool. It looks pretty great. The sweeping nature of these massive coils travelling along the waterbed, stirring up all of the sediment, and the sound effects going along with it, really effective. You really get a sense of how powerful this snake is. And we see it basically looking under the water, trying to get the monkeys. The monkey, however, wakes up, spooks them all up, they all run away, and the anaconda's no food. It's basically the only bit of the anaconda we get in this sequence before we go back to the piripitanga, but it's pretty cool, and I really, really like that. Now we see that the monkeys are gone, there's no one there to knock the berries into the water, so the fish have got to get their own food, and we see them jumping out of the water to catch the ripened berries. Really cool. It was a really good sequence. It's not something I've seen before or since, and because they were pretty plain looking fish, they didn't look particularly impressive. The fact that they were doing something that was actually really cool was really good, so I really like that sequence. We also highlight that this creek isn't that far away from our main road. Like this bit, they look pretty wild. You've got your fish, you've got your monkeys, your anacondas. It's pretty much right on the doorstep of major infrastructure. It was a very understated look. Humans are very much encroaching on the space of nature. It's very interesting. And then the last major bit of footage we get are the swifts, the great dusky swifts at Ixuzu Falls. We see that the swifts, they nest under the waterfall so they're safe from kites. Usually a good thing. However, upstream we've got a dam, so I think we tend to think of hydropower as being a good thing. Like, it's obviously, a renewable, it's better than fossil fuels. However, all these dams do cause a lot of problems. They obviously halt a lot of water downstream, but when they open them, they create a massive surge, and that's really bad for the swifts. So the swifts have got waterproof feathers, but their chicks, the swiftlets, don't. So when the water surges down, it basically washes the parents away, but the way parents are ultimately able to get out in time. The chicks, however, aren't so lucky. We see a lot of chicks getting swept away, and it's actually pretty depressing. I didn't remember it being as sad as it was, but I definitely did feel something here. But we see some swiftlets get away. They're able to get out of the water and able to join their parents on the wing. That is good. It's a really good way of ending the episode. And I think it was very effective to talk about that, because we're all aware of deforestation, we're aware of things like that, the cattle ranching, stuff like that. I don't think anyone really does think about this, about how these dams are actually causing problems for wildlife. While they may be a step in the right direction to saving the planet, they are still causing problems. And the diaries was all about the people filming the pumas. Obviously, what else was it going to be? And it's just really good. I don't think it added anything new to the sequence for me, but because I enjoyed it so much the first time round, I was very happy to watch it again. It's really cool watching them filming the pumas, looking for them. They did a really good job of translating their experience of really rooting for this puma to the audience, I think. So that was really cool. So yeah, this episode is really good. It's a good episode. Pretty much most of the episodes in this series are great, to be honest. Highlights for this one, it's obviously the pumas. I also really like the piripitanga, the swifts at the end were really cool as well. There's a lot in here to like, to be fair. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. What were your highlights? Let me know. And as ever, feel free to like, comment and subscribe, or don't if you don't want to. It's perfectly fine if you don't. And I'll see you next time for the next episode, which is all about Australia, so look forward to that. So yeah, I'll see you then, and goodbye.